Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Um, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I'm going to talk about FOGS. If you want to know what FOGS is, that's Forced Off-Grid Survival. It's my own made-up acronym. Anyway, because some people buy a battery for the home, and the reason they buy it is they want to go off-grid and not have to buy the power, or maybe they're in a place where they don't have power, so the only way they can do it is with some kind of battery system to plug into their house. The other reason why you see people buy batteries, house batteries, is because they want to do what is called a grid tie, and they're going to sell the power back to the power company when the solar panels are all collecting all that power. And I think we all know how that is working out for those ideas. Anyway, those are the two main reasons why most of these companies are trying to sell you items. It's based on the first two. I don't think many of them really take the time to think through, well, if I'm only worried about doing it for a period of time when I don't have the power available to me until the power comes back and I can do it comfortably, get by with the bare minimum of things I need to do, first off, I don't need any solar, because that is a very hard way to recharge a battery system. It takes a while to do it. If I do it from a generator, is the way I design my system. I have the charger. Let me rephrase that. I have the inverter in my battery system, 6,000 watt inverter, 240 volts. So I can just plug it directly into the house and power the house from that inverter. I have 20 kilowatts of battery power so that I can go for, I estimate, about 24 hours on that battery backup system. After that, I'm high and dry unless I find a way to figure out how to charge that back up. Trying to charge that from a solar system, I would have to have over 4,000 watts of solar set up and hope it's going to be sunny all day. Day like this, I wouldn't have even come close to pulling in 20 kilowatts. And if you're going to use that tomorrow, you better be putting 20 kilowatts back in today so you have it there for the next 24 hours. That's why a generator of some kind is the way to do that. Now, if your amount of consumption you want to put back and maintain the house, if you can do it for under 10 kilowatts in 24 hours, great. It takes a lot less, and you won't need as much charging power. So everything you're going to do is really got to be based on what is going to be the consumption of your house during your FOGS period. Once you're not on the grid and you want to get by, I'm not going to use certain things. I'm going to make sure I only have maybe the one TV I'm watching on, and when I would leave the room, I would shut it off, as opposed to now I got two TVs running all day long, every day. It's one of my bad habits. Anyway, I could cut back on the amount of power I would need for the bare minimum. Refrigerator, freezers, that sort of thing. Minimum amount of lights. So my consumption, I can get down quite low. And you really need to know that, so you know what size battery system and what size replenishing system you're going to need to maintain it day after day. So, and the two ways I can think of for you to keep replenishing that battery power, in my system anyway, is either from your vehicle. Believe it or not, almost any vehicle out there, you can set up to be able to pull probably somewhere between 600 to 800 watts of electrical power to replenish your battery system. So if your system is only using, let's say, 3,000 watts of electrical power a day, you could then run your car for 3 hours, or a little over 3.5 hours, and you'd be able to replenish the battery, your battery, house battery, every day by running your car and hooking it up to your battery system to recharge them. You could do that. The problem with a car vehicle using that as your generator is it's very limited, and 800 watts isn't very much if you've got some kind of battery system for a whole house. That usually takes a little bit more than 800 watts of recharging. So anyway, but you could do that if that's what you want to do, and it'll save you from the price of buying a generator if you can get by recharging from your car at 800 watts an hour. So, but that's why I have a generator. My generator, I can put out 7,000 watts, which means that I really run it at 4,500 watts. It's running at 60% then of its full capacity, and that's when it's most efficient. And if I'm putting 4,500 or 4,600 watts back into my system, and I got to go to 20 kilowatts of power every day, that means I got to run that unit for 5 hours a day, 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours in the afternoon, and I keep that battery high enough that I can go until the next time I'm going to charge it up. So you got to have some way to make sure your system is going to keep perpetually going for a period of time. Now I will tell you that because I use the gas generator, I do also keep about 10 to 13 gallons of gasoline in the gas can that I have. It's a roll around one of those ones with the little hand pump, and it works okay. I like it, and I use air pressure so that it pumps easier, and that's a video in itself. I've got a couple out there, and I'm about to do another one because I'm upgrading some stuff on it I think you'll like. But you got to have the backup. I have that backup gasoline simply so that I have enough gasoline to run that generator for 5 hours a day, and I can go probably almost 2 weeks on the gasoline that I would have, theoretically. But I can go several days, that I know. And if the problem as it evolves becomes longer than that, I have that period of time to try to readjust so that I can redo whatever I need to continue to survive. That at least allows me another 2 weeks of planning time to figure out what I'm going to do after 2 weeks if I still have the problem. And it looks like it'll be here longer than 2 weeks. So you have to put some kind of plan together and base it on how much power you actually are going to need. You really need to do your homework on that, so you know what size battery you want, and make sure you're going to have enough battery power to go. And I would recommend planning on being able to go 24 hours without charging it, and that way you can at least go all night long. If it goes out, the one time it went out here, it was 8 o'clock at night. Well, I didn't want to go out there 8 o'clock at night and fire up the generator if I run out of power. So I just took and I just plugged it in, and it was able to go all night long. So you want to make sure you have enough power to be able to go all night long in case you have to plug it in right at the end of the daylight hours. And that way you won't be able to plug the generator in until the next morning. At least it would be frowned upon around this neighborhood if I did that. So you do want to make sure that you have a good plan for enough battery to do it. Now, as far as what you buy, I made mine. I did a DIY, and that's another story. You don't have to do a DIY to have a good backup system for your house. You don't have to be an electric wizard or any of that, and I'll explain that all to you here in a minute. You only have to be able to have some kind of unit that you can turn on and plug in to your house, and then you can be up and running. That type of thing, theoretically. So if you talk about pre-rolled units, there's a lot of them out there. I would not buy anything. If you have a 240 volt house, which most homes here in the United States are a 240 split phase type electrical power, you're going to want to get a generator, a solar generator, power station, whatever you want to call it. You're going to want to get one that is 240 volts to be able to run everything. And I would recommend you get a unit where you get 240 volts out of one plug-in. Do not buy where you have to have 2 units and then you put a hub between them and then you plug your 240 into that hub. That has some drawbacks to it, and it has to do with pulling the power from both sides equally. One battery can run out of power while the other one still got 50% battery. That'll cut down the amount of time that you need before you have to recharge, if that's the case. So if you pull everything together off of one battery to one inverter like I have here, or into a regular inverter that puts out 240 itself, then it's only pulling from the one battery rather than two separate inverters being converted into split phase. And you'll get your batteries will be more efficiently pulling the amount of power out of it for both legs at the same time, no matter which one, how much each side is pulling. So avoid the ones that have the hub if you can. I would not be comfortable with that kind of unit. Anyway, it's just a piece of advice. As far as the generator, make sure you do have enough power coming out of that generator in wattage on the AC side to be able to produce more than what you think you're going to need, so that you can run it for a certain time of day and be able to have that amount of power to push back into your system. You can go with a 120 volt generator instead of a 240 volt, a smaller one. But if you do, you're only going to get about 1800 watts at a time, so you're going to run that generator a lot longer. So kind of keep those things in mind of how you want to do it. You could do it with two generators if that's the case. So, but plan it out, because you're going to probably need to replenish that sooner or later on the fly while you're still using it and be able to go for multiple days. So just keep that in mind. Whatever system you go, you do want to try to do just one inverter box. Don't use a dual box set up together. That has some drawbacks because of the batteries. Anyway, I'm rambling about that. There was one more point I really wanted to make about this whole system that you want to keep in mind, however you do it. But I do think that it's a different animal to try to set up your system to be a forced off-grid survival type idea, as opposed to just an off-grid or a grid tie type of system. I would not recommend solar at all for a forced off-grid design system, because it's just too slow, and if you're only going to use it when the power goes out, that means every time the power goes out, you got to pull all the panels out, lay them out, and you have to do a lot, because if you're pulling in 20 kilowatt like I am, 20 kilowatts a day, I get 5 hours of sunlight here theoretically. That would take a lot of solar panels. I'd have to lay out on the ground and get all wired up and everything, just the bare minimum. Then I have to hope for those sunny days. So I would not rely on solar being part of my plan for a perpetual forced off-grid type of scenario. I think I would probably stick to the generator idea only. But most people, I've never heard anybody talk about this, because really being forced off-grid is all I'm interested in surviving. The other thing I want to talk about real quick is not only is the electrical power important if the power goes out, because you do lose it. I have found that in 2 to 3 outages, I also lost communication. My internet goes down every time the power goes out. But one time, even the cellular the cellular signal, I couldn't get a good connection with it, because I'm sure everybody else was on the cellular line instead. And so I couldn't connect that to my network to be able to find out what's going on through the internet, because the cellular signal is so bad. So you have to kind of think about maybe having 1 or 2 cellular accounts so that you get to be able to use either or type of thing. There's a lot about that. But I'm now starting to think about how I'm going to survive if the power goes out. How am I going to be able to be sure that I can still get an internet connection so I can get information of what's going on, whether it's just local, statewide, nationwide, or around the whole world. I would like to know what's going on. I think I have Spectrum, which is a landline type of internet hookup. I just signed up for Starlink, and I put it in about 2 weeks ago, so I'm still trying to evaluate it, and I have both of them going right now. And I'm probably going to switch to the Starlink. I'm hoping I get an outage before that. I make that switch so I can see how it acts in an outage. And of course, that means I got to put a UPS on the Starlink router so that when the power goes out, it continues to stay connected. But overall, that's something else that you have to kind of think about is what kind of an internet connection are you going to have if the power goes out? And sometimes it can get even deeper than that. If you have an electric furnace, you may not be able to use it with a smaller home backup system. And it would take such a big system, you can't afford it. But if you could run everything but the furnace to get by, maybe you could find an alternative way to heat your house. I do carry 10 gallons of kerosene, and I have 2 kerosene heaters. Kerosene heaters. Those are little torpedo ones that stand up. They're very large, and I've heated a house with this thing many times. There was a time when I was using my kerosene heaters for my heat all winter long. My furnace never ran a couple of times when times were real hard and lean. So it can be done, and so I do have 2 of those. And what I like about those, the shelf life on those is I pull them out, give them a quick cleaning. I can put kerosene in there, get the wick started, and I'm up and running just that quick. So within a half hour, I could have a kerosene have heat, and it means that I also have cooking, because you can cook on those things too. A good kerosene heater is a good backup system for heat if you need to get some kind of heat going. It's not the best or the cleanest heat in the world, but then again, if you're forced off and you're only going to be there for a while, I'm going to do what it takes to keep warm too. So it's nice to have that as a simple backup. And with 10 gallons of kerosene, I can go a couple, 3 days, I think, if I remember the consumption on that amount of kerosene. So at this point, I have a reasonable backup of all the important things to be able to do if the power goes out. The other thing is the water. And I do have my own well, which means that if I have electrical power, I also always have water. But again, I don't store extra water. I do have a hot water heater. If power goes out and I can't get the water out of the ground, I at least have the water that's in the hot water heater that I can use temporarily for water for a couple of days so we can get by. So there's ways to get by if you have to in other ways, depending upon what really is the scenario why you don't have power. So anyway, these are some of my thoughts about FOGS. It's totally different than the other 2 scenarios that you hear about. And honestly, I don't really hear anybody talking about whether they call it something else or call it FOGS. Being forced off the grid is no fun, especially when you're a senior citizen like we are. There's some things that we absolutely need to have just to have. So, and I'm sure there are others that need even more than what we need. So the electric power is something that we've learned in this world that we can't get by without. And quite honestly, a good FOGS system will help you survive it if and when the power is ever taken away from you for whatever reason. You can at least get by until you can get back onto grid or bug out and go somewhere where you have to go and leave the area if that's what it takes. So I at least have the time and the energy to be able to sit here and get by for up to 2 weeks without having to bug out, as long as my roof is still intact. So anyway, that's my thoughts about FOGS. If you want to talk about that more, believe me, it's the subject I think about all the time these days. I am also going to talk about some other things, as I mentioned, as this channel goes on again. I do want to talk about senior citizen. I am what I call a professional senior citizen. I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I think I've become an expert at being retired. And believe it or not, there's some interesting thoughts about transitioning from the working world to being retired. There's some things that I learned over the years that I wish I'd known the first week I retired. It probably would have made it a little easier for me. So, and security. That is a biggie now as a senior citizen. So I'm going to be talking about senior citizen security, SCS. So stay tuned for that. I have a lot of thoughts about that and about things that I've done to change my life, because the world is changing too. So anyway, There's some other things that we're going to talk about. I have lots of good ideas out there that I'm going to do. I have my bungee cords, my shop-made bungee cords. Here's one here, where I don't buy bungee cords anymore. I hate them. So I decided to design my own. This works pretty good, but there's some little tricks about how you make this that you need to learn that I've already learned the hard way. So stay tuned. I'm going to go over and do an episode on how to make your own bungee cords for your shop and for your home use. So, and I think you'll like that one. And there's some other things too. So anyway, it's not going to be boring. If you have any comments, any questions, any ideas about any of these things, please let me know. If you know of somebody else that's already talking about this stuff, let me know. I would love to see what they have to say about it. I know there's some out there, but I haven't seen hardly anything on the FOGS subject, so in particular. But same thing with senior citizen security. That is different than anybody else in security. And I think maybe it's worthwhile for us to start talking about it. So if you hear anybody out there that's talking about these things, let me know. In the meantime, thanks for coming by. If you like this video, you learned something, hit that like button. Lets me know I'm doing something right still. But most importantly though, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. And bring your coffee, because I do love to ramble. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again very soon.